Hi, you're listening to episode 1 of Unshackled, Born into Silence. There are stories that live in silence, stories buried beneath hymns, behind closed doors, inside the hearts of those who were never allowed to speak. I was raised in a world where obedience was survival, questioning was rebellion, where music was both forbidden and sacred. At 17, I was excommunicated, cast out, not just from a church, but from my family, my community, my entire identity. This is my story, not to shame, not to destroy, but to reclaim. For anyone who's ever been silenced, shunned, or told they were too much, this is for you. My name is Kevin, and this is Unshackled. All right, welcome back to this new YouTube video series we're doing. Was called Unshackled, but I think we got to change the name because we found another podcast that has the same name, so we got to change it. But thanks for tuning in and all the comments and new subscribers and all that stuff. This is episode 2. If you haven't watched episode 1, I would recommend you do that. This is a series of my childhood growing up and all the fun that was part of it. So we'll get back into it.
Let's begin with your early memories. Around 2nd or 3rd grade, a new pastor arrived in your community. Can you describe what changed when he came?
Well, this pastor, he came from the U.S. somewhere. He was doing a whole course on music and how you should not play any worldly music. It was, I think, in his eyes, and maybe the church that hired him, they thought that he was going to educate us all on what music was and how good it is and what's not good and all that. But it ended up being just more condemning of all the music that I loved. He framed almost all contemporary music as just pure evil, dissecting it in ways that's like totally bizarre. Anything that made you want to dance, he would say no, clap, stomp. It was just all considered sinful. And even down to the tempo, I remember him talking about a situation where they had done a study on people that worked in a factory, and they had sped up they had some music that was sped up, some music that was slowed down, or just different types of music even, and how it changed the workflow and how fast they worked. And somehow, according to that, he came up with a number, and I don't remember what the number was, but you couldn't go anywhere above that tempo. It was too fast and made you want to dance and jump. That's no good. So it was portrayed as manipulative and dangerous. It was just kind of insane thinking back on it now.
That's a powerful image. How did he present these ideas to the congregation?
I remember he used an old overhead projector, the ones they used to use in schools and all that stuff. He had these transparent slides he'd put on there, and they were full of just either graphs or pictures of my favorite bands. Growing up listening to different bands, like different country music that we considered was okay, at least my parents did. One band that I remember in particular, it was the Oak Ridge Boys, and to this day I love their music. But because they had, there was one guy that had super long hair, some were probably wearing jewelry, rings, whatnot. That was big time no. He figured that was completely evil. And it was over a week length period where this was going on, they would have courses during the day and then also have church services in the evening. And it was just loaded with pictures of every artist out there that has any kind of fame in the country music, basically, or rock, or, all that stuff. Basically, yeah, it was all just evil in his eyes.
What kind of impact did this teaching have on the community?
Well, it was divisive, massively so. Music was a lifeline for all of us. At least I remember me and my friends, we all were confused. There was a lot of confusion, heartbreak, and a lot of people resisted it. And so much so that after that happened, there was a big split in the church, because there were a lot of people that just very, very much did not agree with not being able to listen to any music that had drums or any sort of music. They just weren't going to have it. So, yeah, from that point on, I struggled to understand what the deal was, why it was such a big no all of a sudden, where, music was okay, and then all of a sudden some music is super bad. And yeah, it just was like two worlds colliding. It all didn't make a whole lot of sense.
And within your own family?
Well, it tore us apart, I would say. My dad decided that it was better to just destroy all the cassette tapes that were deemed bad by this pastor. My older brothers didn't agree. They kept listening to all the kind of country music that I now love. Yeah, my dad, he's only accepted like a cappella hymnal music basically after that. They kept some cassette tapes and CDs and whatnot through the years that were kind of country-ish gospel, I guess you would say. But it has to be like super Christian. The band has to be proclaim or like saying that they're Christian, all that jazz, or else they can't even listen to it.
What about your mom?
My mom still loves it, but she is also under the impression that a lot of this kind of music that I make or that you hear on the radio is all just bad, and she goes along with what Dad says anyway. So this next part is a little rough, so I gotta give you all a trigger warning. It contains discussion of sexual abuse, so listener discretion is advised.
Around 1999, another shift occurred with the arrival of a new family. Could you tell us about them?
Yeah, so this family moved from Mexico back in, 99, I guess, around there. I must have been around 7, 8. And they had an oldest son who was already older at that time. He was a biological son, their only one. And then they had 2 adopted sons. And the youngest one was troubled in some ways, and he we'll refer to him as R. I won't say his real name, but he's kind of central to this whole story. I'm not angry at him for what he did. He had can't even say that word, developmental disabilities, and lacked the capacity to understand the gravity of his actions. And so my anger is towards the adults and like his parents, church leaders, even my own parents, older siblings who knew what was going on and did nothing. Yeah, it's a pretty rough ride, but here we go.
What happened?
Well, I mean, it started probably almost immediately, at least where R would expose himself a lot in front of the kids. Would start within the bathrooms, in the back of the church, or on the playground, wherever we were playing as kids. He'd come and play with all of us, and he would just start rubbing himself and doing some odd stuff that was very strange and scared a lot of us kids. And but it just kept getting worse. He began grabbing kids and just kind of tickling them and playing with them, and then next thing you know, he's touching them, and then he's rubbing himself, and he's all kinds of things would be going on. And it happened to too many that I can even count. I've witnessed a lot of that happening, so it's kind of all blurred. There's a few moments that I clearly, obviously remember, but it went on for years. I was one of them that got sexually touched and abused. And it went on for years. I would say around 7, 8 till, well, I would say around 15, 16.
Was this known in the community?
Yeah, everyone knew, which is what was so frustrating and is still kind of. The children all talked about it. Everybody was mentioning it to their parents or, pastors. They all knew. Everybody knew. I remember his cousins, they would say some things like, we would have discussions about this guy and what needed to happen to him, and they sometimes mentioned like he needs to just get his sack cut off and be done with it. But it didn't matter what the kids and even the youth had to say about it. Somehow nothing was done about it.
Was there ever any attempt to stop it?
Well, years later, years, around 15 maybe, they finally figured out kind of a system. It didn't work, but they at least made it look like they had something in place where the men over 18 in the church that weren't married, they would be in charge certain weeks, certain weekends to watch him whenever he was around the other kids, anybody really. You'd have to take him to town, whatever, do all kinds of different things with him. And they had these all, the whole list figured out, but the fact was that there were so many of those people that were watching him that were not really aware of how bad it was and how much you'd actually have to watch him and make sure that he could never walk into a bathroom alone. Like, you just did not. That was one big thing you could not let him do. So there was just a lot of avoidance. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Just sweep it under the rug and hope it just goes away.
How did this affect you personally?
Well, I shut down. Emotionally, socially, I just disappeared. Was often forgotten, left behind, left home alone. all that jazz. When I saw Home Alone for the first time, I actually was like, wow, his name's Kevin as well. Holy cow, this is my movie. Yeah, so, and to make it worse, my parents felt, and I think in general, most of the adults, they felt pity for this guy and his family, you know. So my parents, they'd actually invite them over quite regularly. They were over a lot. And he was just everywhere. I mean, any church event, anytime we were anywhere. I mean, he was almost always there. Looking back, this is a little side note, but a big reason probably why I enjoyed leaving. We would, as a family, go south to the southern part of Manitoba to see a lot of our family relatives. And I think a big reason why I loved it so much was just I didn't have to be at the church events where he was.
And music?
Well, music, I mean, became my refuge. It was, the very music they called evil. The only thing that made me feel seen or understood, it was my escape. It was everything. For many of us kids who were hurting a lot, it was the only thing that helped us survive. And we'd listen to it if they didn't want us to or not. We would listen to radios in vehicles, and we had cassette radios at home. I would record songs on cassette tapes over top other cassette that's already taped on. We did all kinds of stuff. But yeah, music helped me for sure get through all that.
Thank you for sharing this. Your story is one of pain, resilience, and truth. If you could say one thing to those who are still living in silence, what would it be?
Well, you're not alone. Your pain is real. And even if the world around you refuses to see it, there's always healing in speaking your truth. There's power in reclaiming your voice and just speaking out, telling your story. I know that's the hardest thing I've ever done, and this might be one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it's the most rewarding thing to do. To see other people also have similar stories or just, grew up pretty strict and all that stuff. It gives me all kinds of hope, and that community is wonderful to have. And also we'll put a phone number in the bottom of the screen. It's for the suicide hotline if anybody is feeling like they can't go on, which I understand. Sometimes it's just best you talk to someone. Thanks for watching this. It's been a little hard for me to do, honestly, but we did it, and I hope you stick around and watch many more. Thank you. If you or someone you love is struggling, here are some resources. Call 988 for Suicide Helpline in Canada, or 1-855-443-5722 for family violence and abuse, or 211, or 1-800-799-7233 for domestic violence, 1-800-668-6868 for Kids Help Phone. Call any of those numbers if you need help.